In the more hardcore circles, most notably lifting culture, there's this idea of tapping into the darkness, using negative emotions as fuel. You have people saying that you cannot be the teenager who got his heart broken, put on 3 days grace pain and lean into the pain. And I think that may kinda work if the pain is inevitable. For example, in equipped roided out lifting, people would go in with broken ribs and put on 3 belts, blast Metallica and still train because the workout needed to get done. Maybe it can work, maybe it's a matter of personality, maybe whatever else. And I don't have the hubris to say that Chuck Vogelpohl would have been better if he listened to Bimbo songs while training. But I think I have a personality that can tap into that really well, and I had been doing so for a long time, but once I tried being more positive, everything just started going better. I don't watch horror films, I don't listen to sad or even slightly negative music because they're basically bad for my productivity. They pull me away from what I want in life. I like my positivity clean. No positivity from negativity, no getting hyped up from Marilyn Manson and wanting to kill anyone that crosses my path, just good, clean fun. It doesn't sound very appealing, it doesn't make a good story, it's not hardcore, but it's better. I might not have the hubris to say that West Side powerlifters would have been better off focusing on pure productivity, on pure positivity, I may not have the hubris to say that West Side powerlifters would have been better off focusing on pure positivity, but the guy who trains with a broken heart, sure, he went to failure and went to extreme pain, but honestly, if he went fully positive, he probably would have gotten the same number of reps easily and with better form, and would have been able to go beyond that. Pain is not a limiting factor in how many reps you can get unless you make it. Because the thing is, when you tap into the pain, that's what you're focusing on. So you're constantly thinking about pain and that amplifies it. Whereas if you're lifting feeling like you're on top of the world, you don't even think about pain. I've done super grindy AMRAPs and I've never felt soul crushing pain unless I was doing boring pump work for the delts. Yeah, delts, not even legs. And the same thing applies to intellectual work. If you've watched my video on psychoanalysis for productivity, you know that from my perspective, what stops you when working is actually issues. It's just that those issues are not as apparent as physical pain, so you don't notice them and you just end up doing what you feel like. For example, you might stop to get some coffee. How much of that is actually wanting to get coffee and how much of that is getting away from the problem or wanting to put yourself in a different state of mind through caffeine because you feel like you cannot handle your work well currently. Why now specifically? I mean, you gotta do it at some point, but is there more to why you're choosing now? These things are so intricate that you don't even notice the decision making you're doing. And so no wonder intellectual work doesn't feel as hard as physical work. It's because you're getting away from the problems at their first sight. So positivity will allow you to do your work even without having to encounter those problems. The best way to deal with problems is to not have them in the first place.
Problem solver.
I'm more of a problem eliminator.
And I know someone might say, well, you're going to encounter problems at some point. Okay, sure. I've solved 90% of my problems and I'm ready for new ones. Meanwhile, you've done nothing, absolutely zero. I think people try to parallel the physical world with the abstract world and think that problems need to be worked through. But no, in reality, in intellectual work, you do stuff that is basically unrelated to the actual problem, and then you realize the problem is gone. The problem doesn't need to be beat down. It's not a Minecraft block that you need to keep striking with your pickaxe. No, it just disappears when things are lined up. It's like when they say that defining a problem is halfway to solving it. The other half is also not the same kind of grind as physical work. For example, when solving a physics problem, you need to write down the equations and notes to make checkpoints in your brain and lay everything out for you to be able to wrap your mind around and navigate it. But if you had an infinite mind, you would just get it and write out the solution. But the point is that this process is just for you to comprehend what's going on. It's not actually part of getting the solution. It's like when chess grandmasters can memorize the board in seconds. They don't actually do anything to memorize it, they just look at it and get it. And so problem elimination is problem solving. There's no actual process of solving required. It's just problem unsolved, problem solved. And how you get there is a whole thing entirely and technically not required. People always try to incorporate control from the outside in, like making sure you're getting your hours in or that you're not using your phone at work. But the processes in your head are so intricate, it's hard to put your finger on it. You're never going to have full control over what ends up happening. You try to get in 8 hours of work, fine. But you realize you've been on your phone for a chunk of that time. So you also ban your phone use, fine. But you end up zoning out for a chunk of that time. You set a ringtone every minute to remind you to get back to work if you've zoned out, fine. But you end up just clicking things and not really contributing meaningfully. You're going to find a way. So you also need to change things from the inside out, often to the point that this outside-in control becomes unnecessary. Just like when you don't want to do something, you find a way to half-ass it. When you really want to do something, you find a way to do it more and better, and it's all implicit. That's also basically cultivating motivation. It's just putting yourself in the right mindset so that you implicitly make those tiny decisions that are in line with your goals. And a positive mindset is the best mindset to have.